Hello, welcome back to EPG. I'm, of course, your host, Greg. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, and that is the hardest accents for gringos to understand when they're learning Spanish. I am a gringo. I do speak Spanish. I did learn Spanish. I started speaking in high school and then eventually went on to college, got a degree in it, and then, traveled to a whole bunch of different Spanish-speaking countries, including Spain, all around Latin America. So I know a thing or two when you are trying to understand people in a language that you are speaking that is not your native tongue, and how difficult it can be to understand what some people are saying. So this is all personal opinion. This is not means to offend anybody from these countries or places that I'm about to mention. This is just a list of places that I find particularly difficult for people who are learning Spanish, for people who have learned Spanish in one country and are trying to translate it into another country. So let us begin. So I'm going to go from the least most difficult to, for me, the most difficult. So the first place we're going to talk about is Andalucia, Spain. So Andalucia, it encompasses a couple places. Sevilla is one of them. Cadiz is another. And it runs along the west coast of Spain. It is very difficult to understand people there for a variety of reasons. Number one, they kind of eat their words, so there is not a lot of pronunciation, especially with verbs. So it's difficult to try to understand what is doing what to whom when you're in Andalusia. And that kind of leads into, for me, the second most difficult place to understand what people are saying, and that is in Puerto Rico. While personally I have not traveled to Puerto Rico, I do know a lot of Puerto Rican people, and especially in places like New York and places like Miami, there are a lot of Puerto Ricans that live there, and their Spanish is a lot like Seville in that they really don't pronounce a lot of their syllables. So for example, when someone says para, they just say pa. So it's just kind of understanding different colloquialisms and that part with Puerto Rican Spanish. So also going along with that, another country in the Caribbean that has way difficult pronunciation for people to who don't normally or don't natively speak Spanish is Cuba. So I have traveled to Cuba. I was there under a student visa to study in 2003 when I was there. And it was incredibly difficult to kind of understand what people were saying. Again, much like Puerto Rico, much like Sevilla, they all eat their words. So there's not a very clear pronunciation for a lot of things. Which is also kind of interesting because it was basically a lot of sailors that came out of Sevilla and then went to the New World and settled these places. So they settled Puerto Rico, they settled Cuba. So a lot of those linguistic tendencies ended up in these new places. Then you have a couple hundred years for it to evolve and then change, and then something becomes something else, and then it changes again. Which then leads me to probably the fourth most difficult place for gringos to understand Spanish. But first, if you would please like and subscribe to these videos so I can continue to make more, I'd very much appreciate it. So number 4 is going on to the continent of South America, and that is Argentina. Now, Argentina is different for a variety of ways. It's not because the pronunciation isn't clear, but it's because there are a couple things. One is that the double L, so for like the word for chicken and the word for yellow, in Spanish, in all the rest of the world, or at least mostly the rest of the world, there's some parts in Uruguay, they pronounce that double L in other parts of the world, other parts of the Spanish-speaking world, with a Y. So, yo. So like pollo or amarillo. But in Argentina, they pronounce it like a J. So pollo, amarillo. So that took a lot of getting used to. And also, especially in Buenos Aires, a lot of the people who live there are from Italian heritage. So they came in the 19th and 20th centuries. So because it's a Romance language, Italian, a lot of words took on more of an Italian context. For example, in Spanish, in the rest of the world, cerveza is beer. But in Buenos Aires, it is birra. So that comes from the Italian influence. So moving on to the final and most difficult accent in Spanish, dialect, one might say, to understand, at least for me. Again, a gringo who has learned Spanish, was not brought up in a Spanish-speaking household. I had to learn it the old-fashioned way. That accent is the working class dialect of Santiago, Chile. And the reason why I have had personal experience with this, I had an Uber ride that went from one of the outskirt places of Santiago back into the city. I could not understand a single word that my Uber driver was saying, and I tried so hard. And I asked him to repeat himself, and I didn't want him to feel bad. I didn't want to feel bad that I couldn't understand him, but he was speaking Spanish. I know that, but the accent was so hard to understand. So yeah, those are the five. So Andalusian, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Argentinian, and working class Santiago, Chile. Again, probably going to get some internet hate for this, but the thing is that, again, it was just for me as somebody who has learned Spanish and has been speaking Spanish for over 25 years. Those were definitely the accents and dialects that took a lot of getting used to. And then eventually, sort of, kind of, especially in the case of my Chilean friend, to understand. So it's all about understanding when you're learning a new language, and it's about understanding basically what people have to offer. So it's a whole rainbow of accents out there, and yeah, so thank you very much for your time, and get out there.